Hey, it's another weekend, which means there's another van project.
What are you wearing?
What do you mean? It's my t-shirt and Viores. This is what I always wear when I work on the van.
No. What's on your head?
Well, we had some leftover fabric from the headliner, so I made a headliner.
Oh my gosh. That was not the extra piece of fabric with the 3M90 on it, was it?
No, that'd be kind of funny though, wouldn't it? What is up, my dudes and dudettes? Behind that camera is Colleen, and I am Todd Sawyer. This thing might as well have had 3M90 on it because it hasn't left my head since we made it. What do you think? Moonraker Duramax Tweed bucket hats in the web store? Anyways, see that beautiful headliner behind me here? We're gonna show you how we reupholstered it. Let's get into it. Before we really get into this, we need to remove some of the hardware from the headliner. The dome light assembly comes out easy with a thin credit card or a putty knife stuck in the slot between the trim and the unit. Next, you'll need to flip the headliner over. Wait, is the backside of a headliner a hindliner? Anyways, I digress. You'll need to remove a bunch of these little clips. They are a two-part design in which you need to lift up the rear clip high enough in order to push back the main clip to disengage. I found a combination of trim removal tools, a metal pick, and my good old-fashioned digits to be adequate in getting them all unclipped. Take your time with this kind of stuff. The last thing you'd want to do is break one of these, and once they are all unclipped, the two halves separate. Once the hardware has been removed, you can start trying to remove the fabric. I thought things were going to be easy because when I started from the corner, the fabric peeled back with minimal resistance. It was like peeling one of those little cuties, you know, the mandarin oranges where the peel basically falls off itself. I remember telling Colleen, nice, a van project that's less than 2 hours. I should have knocked on wood then, because little did I know the deep, dark rabbit hole I was about to embark into. The next day. So have you ever started a project and within the first 5 minutes you realized you've made a terrible mistake, but you keep marching down that path anyway? It's almost like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and although it keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, you can still see it, so you keep going. Well, that's exactly what happened to us on this project. We spent the last 5 hours between last night and this morning picking, clawing, pulling, tearing, wire wheeling, sanding, anything that we could do to get the factory headliner in this state. And I do not wish this pain upon anyone. If I were to do this over again, I would probably just bond a new upholstery to the old one. There is no way this thing is coming off in the next decade or so. Anyways, my hands hurt, my fingers hurt, but we are ready to move on. Let's do it. The upholstery we are using is from Van Mart by Van Speed. They are kind enough to sell this to DIY folks like ourselves. They definitely charge a premium for it at $250 plus shipping. There is only about $40 worth of fabric here, but templating and patterning out the shape definitely took some work from them, and it saves us some time not having to figure it out for ourselves. Following their recommendation as well, we're using 3M90 contact adhesive, and we're starting from the center around the dome light bulge. Vanspeed puts this headliner fabric in each of their vans, and I assume it's using the same adhesive, so there is some history there. If you live in a super hot climate or are worried about it, you may want to use DAP Weldwood Landau Top and Trim instead. When working with 3M90 and Marathon Tweed, or any other woven fabric for that matter, it's important to make sure the adhesive is not too wet before bonding the surfaces together. Otherwise, it will bleed through and form a permanent stain. So how do we make sure the adhesive isn't too wet? Well, the official, sanctioned and approved 3M knuckle method, of course. Test for tackiness by gently touching the adhesive with your knuckle. If the adhesive transfers to your skin, it's too wet. If the adhesive is aggressively tacky and does not transfer to your skin, it's ready to bond. If the adhesive is dry or only has a very light tack to it, it's too dry and another coat of adhesive should be applied to at least one of the surfaces. We worked our way out and up from the hump, working slowly, making sure the fabric was attached to the dips and valleys before moving out to the larger flat areas. It really is an art. It's hard to describe how to do it without actually doing it yourself. Now that we've done one, I'm sure the next one would be a little bit easier. Here is Colleen's back. I cut X's for each hole and folded the fabric around. This prevents the weave from untangling. I also folded about 1/2 to 3/4 inch of fabric around the outer perimeter as well. We just finished upholstering this bad boy. This was by far one of the hardest projects on the van so far. We made a few mistakes along the way, but I think it looks pretty good for a couple of amateurs. Colleen was absolutely instrumental on this project. She is a wizard with fabric, and I really appreciated her help. Anyways, let's throw this in the van and see how it looks. Before I put the headliner back in the van, I wanted to make sure I insulated up behind it. We are using 3M Thinsulate, and we mark it with a Dritz 3095 fabric marker. For the front piece, the width of the standard roll at 60 inches works great, and I cut it to 38 inches long. I had to cut 2 wings off the top corners and a notch for the antenna. We then stuffed the lower edge of this Thinsulate into the structural member over the window and applied some 3M90 to both the insulation and our sound-deadened van. After which we started working our way up from the bottom, making sure everything was straight. Now at this point, you may be wondering, who is this handsome feller that's helping me out here? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to one of my life givers, aka my dad. He's probably the #2 Moonraker fan, behind my mother of course, and he just happened to be in town this weekend and wanted to help. We also made these little triangles for the side cavities here, cutting a nice notch in the middle to wrap around our porch lights. We fixed these in place with a couple shots of 3M90 as well. We found on Thinsulate, single-sided application is adequate. And then the headliner is ready to go back in. Please note there are 2 hooks on the front of this thing that need to slide up and into the structural crossmember. Make sure you get those engaged correctly before continuing on. And then you can get the side curtain airbag cover set, making sure to push the headliner edge into the slot completely and verifying the door seal covers them correctly. These also have a hook system which you can see in detail in our headliner removal video. The best way we found to engage these is with a flathead screwdriver. With those set, we can finally put back the most missed feature of the van, sun visors. I did end up adding a bit more insulation up into this giant void before sealing her back up, mostly because big, hard-walled, hollow things like this tend to resonate if the space isn't filled with some sort of acoustic trap. Then I connected up the dome light and called this one done. Well, my friends, that wraps up another video in the Adventure Van Build series. We think this new headliner looks absolutely amazing in here, and we're so excited to have it back in the van because, well, frankly, driving around in California without sun visors for the last 4 months really sucked. Anyways, we would rate this project intermediate to professional, especially if you've never done upholstery before. This shape really is that difficult. You can plan on budgeting about $400 between the cost of the material, the adhesive, and the Thinsulate. We highly recommend you insulate up behind this thing while you have it out of the van. And you can plan on spending a full 8-hour shift at least, especially if your stock fabric is as much of a pain in the ass as it was to remove ours. And that is that. If you like what we're doing, please give us a thumbs up. It really does help us out. If you have any questions or comments about this video, drop those in the comments section below. We respond to every single one. And on your way down there, you know what to do. Slap that subscribe button. We'll see you next time. And I am Todd Sawyer. Hey, Colleen. Another weekend, another band project.
Fabric that had the 3M90.